So a lot of people that I talk to, they are very interested in leaving their job. There's a big phrase of like, when someone leaves their W-2, right? That's a really big deal that you left your job and now you're doing real estate full time. And whether you're a passive investor and you're looking to be able to scale, move away from a job that you like, or maybe a job you don't like, or you're somebody who's going full out after it, just trying to be the best you can as an active investor, meaning you're operating the deal or you're part of an operating team, whether that's multifamily or self-storage or other types of assets within syndication. There are many, many people, including myself, including my guest today, Jason Balara, who have left their job and have been able to fully focus on real estate. And so we were having a little talk earlier in the green room about what that looks like. It's not always as glamorous as what people make it sound like. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty and have just a honest conversation about what that's like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But Jason is the head of Lark Capital, and so I've actually been on his show as well. And we actually recently had him at our meetup as well, and it was just an awesome time because so many people are curious of how do I get from not having my deal like any deals to getting my first multifamily deal. That's the first step, and the second step is how do I actually become financially free and leave my job and do this full time. And so many people want to do that. So hopefully you're asking those questions. If not, I think you'll find his story very inspirational as well. So welcome, Jason. How are you today?
I'm good, Bronson. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. We really had a great time at the Pasadena meetup. We had at least since COVID, we used to have about 50 to 80 people pretty regularly. We had about 50 people, so it was great. Everybody loves hearing a story, and your story is a really cool story about you being a veterinarian or a veterinarian surgeon and being able to, you had multiple things you're doing. And I'd love to just have you tell some of your story and kind of how you got to be able to leave your job.
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, I'm a veterinary surgeon. It's something that there's a lot of training along many years that go into that, but sort of along the way and before I even went to vet school, I've had a background in construction. So if you're looking for the way to tie real estate and veterinary surgery together, that's kind of it for me. There's certainly other ways, but for me, I always had that sort of interest in construction and real estate. We always did our our live-in flips and we did some house hacking and all of that. But then I got into my veterinary career, which can be quite time consuming. And as you said, I was doing a lot of things. So I had a W-2 job. I also had started a side business, that my side hustle was I started my own mobile surgery business, which sometimes people think that means I'm driving around in a van and doing surgery out the back of a van. That's not what it is at all. That's actually
in a van down by the river.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to like your family veterinary clinic and doing surgery there. So instead of being at a true specialty hospital, which is a bigger type of scenario where sometimes people will refer to, it's actually going to the clinics in person and with the where the families are maybe a little more comfortable to be. And so I was doing those two things really for a couple of years. And then basically what happens, we finished renovating our house, and I'm not the type of person to sit back and not do anything. And so I started to decide, okay, now it's time to really seriously get into investing. I looked at the single family stuff. I thought about sort of long distance Burr type investing because I read actually David Green's book on that. And it was compelling to me because I live in California. It's a little bit hard to cash flow. It's a little bit hard to, kind of even get in the door because everything's so expensive. So I started thinking about that long distance thing. And I worked through the progression in my mind with the help of a lot of podcasts and reading books and found my way to multifamily syndication. And so I started Lark Capital basically approximately exactly 2 years ago. Right now, I don't remember the exact day, but pretty close to right about now, which I'm sure everybody knows what was going on about exactly 2 years ago. We were like
Good
right
timing.
in the height of pandemic. So good timing, bad timing. Who knows, right? It is what it is. It was good timing for me in the sense that that's when I was ready to do it, and so I spent a good 2 years essentially doing both my W-2 job, the surgery business, and then also growing the real estate business.
So I'm going to slow you down for a second because you go a mile a minute and you just keep going, and you have some real nuggets in there that I want to slow down. And I think it's going to be really applicable to a lot of people. So you mentioned something that you said I've always had an interest in construction, and you
Mhm.
also said, hey, I live in a house, and I know a little bit of your story too. You live in a house for 2-3 years, you'd fix it up, you kind of do
Yeah.
some of the work yourself, then you and your family would move to another house, which is kind of a cool way to house hack, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of work, and not everybody's necessarily geared that way. But one of your strengths, I think, is really on the operation side. Obviously, the finding deals, there's a part of that that's kind of built into that, and being able to manage deals. And so, there's kind of two approaches people usually take when they're getting ready to get involved in multifamily or any sort of syndicated type of real estate. Typically, it's either through finding deals or it's through finding money. Because if you have deals, then you need money. And if you have money, you need deals, right? So those are kind of two sides. There's more to it, but that's
Right.
primarily what it is. And so, and for you, you had, because you've worked, you're a very hard worker, you also had some capital to be able to get into some of these deals, both as a passive, I think also as a key principal, which is someone who comes
Yep.
in with, signs in the loan docs, a certain amount of net worth, is really bringing that to the table. Can you talk a little bit about, like you said, you launched. What did your first deal look like? How long did that take you to get, under your belt?
Yeah,
What were some
sure.
of the activities of like, okay, I started Lark Capital, and then, is it
Yeah.
crickets or like, well, I know you're working, but like, I mean,
Yeah.
what's the next step?
It feels like crickets. It feels like crickets because that's that's not how I'm wired for things to take a long time, right? It's
Mhm.
just when when you do a lot of that DIY stuff, you're like, I just gotta, I'll outwork this, I'll get this done. And multifamily, syndication doesn't exactly work that way. I got a mentor, so I had a 1 year mentorship, and one of the things, and you just mentioned it, you have the when you're getting started, you really either have to pick, I'm going to find deals or I'm going to find capital, because there's very few people. Like, my strength, I always thought would be my strength would be asset management because of my construction background and my I run my own business. But most of the time, that's not going to be the first thing you're able to do. Nobody's going to bring a newbie in as their asset manager. You're going to have to sort
Right.
of, I guess, prove yourself first. And so, as it turned out for me, I felt more comfortable going the deal finding route. And so I started that process, making broker relationships, making property management relationships. I guess, to back up a little bit, I picked a market. I picked Atlanta as my market. Originally, I had picked almost anywhere in the country that anyone thought was a good market. And I will say that is one of the mistakes that I made initially, because there was so many deals to look at,
Mm.
that, sure, it got me pretty good at underwriting, but it didn't allow me to really focus. It didn't allow me to learn one market extremely well. And so I kind of got in there. I would say I was about 5 or 6 months into the process, and I got pretty down. I was like, this isn't happening. I don't really, I don't know what's going on. It's been a long time. I don't have a deal. Brokers don't really want to talk to me, that kind of thing. And so I took a little bit of a step back, in the sense that I decided, okay, I want to do something, right? We put this capital together, me and my partner for Lark Capital. We put our money together. We had money just sitting there, and I wanted to do. So first thing we did is we invested as LPs in a deal to get that experience and put the money to work. So that
Which
was,
is a great way to learn too. If somebody's
yep.
passive or wants to be active, to invest passively in a deal is a great first step to learn, because you had the money sitting there, you're trying to figure it out. And I'm sure you learned a lot while you were investing with someone else.
Yeah, you can see how they run the deal. You can see how they communicate with investors. There's a whole lot there, if you're paying attention to it, that can, really teach you a lot. Now, the other thing about it, and I think we'll get into this more, we touched on it before we started recording, but basically, there's not, when you start as an active investor, you're not making a lot of money.
Mm.
And so getting some passive investments to actually be bringing in some money is actually a good thing to do in conjunction with starting that active career. So it's really kind of beneficial on a number of different levels.
Yeah, I want to say
Um,
something about that real quick. So we were talking about this before we started recording, and a lot of people think, "Oh, I get these deals done, and I'm just going to get paid all this money up front right away." And there are some acquisition fees. The first big deal I did, I think it was a $44,000 acquisition fee, which sounds, it was amazing. It was great, and to do a few deals
right.
a year. But really the cash flow, that's the stuff that really keeps you going. And the only reason really I was able to leave my job after a couple of years kind of into doing this was that we had multifamily deals and we didn't put a preferred return in there. Because if there's a preferred return, and I've actually kind of I have an opinion now that I think preferred returns in general, I actually don't prefer them. I think it's a better alignment of interest to have just a straight split of an 80-20 or 70-30 or something like that, because
Yeah.
it really starves the operator and it doesn't significantly affect the investors. But some people are like, oh, I want to get my money first, I want to get my money first. But the challenge is unless your operator is just uber wealthy or doesn't it has a somewhat of a misalignment of interest. But so you got started in this, and like you said, you had some passive stuff that you did, which did give you some cash flow, which was great. But then you start, and obviously you get your net worth grows, but this long-term net worth, but you don't necessarily see it in cash flow. So talk us through that. Like, how was that for you as you're looking at, I want to leave what I'm doing, or at
Yeah.
least cut back. Like, how do I do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And that was initially I started this. I didn't set for my goal, I'm going to leave my W-2 job. That wasn't necessarily in my head. I love doing surgery. So always, that wasn't set to me like, oh, in this amount of time, I'm going to leave my job. What I did was I got that, I invested as an LP. We did some hard money lending we just kind of tried to be opportunistic, did some hard money lendings to some house flippers, I JV'd on a self-storage deal, which you mentioned. I was also a KP on that deal, so I signed on the loan. So I did things to sort of put the money to work and gain more and more experience while continuing to look for the multifamily thing. So the good thing for me is I was never doing it for the cash flow at the time, right? I wasn't thinking about that. However, I invest passively in every one of my deals. Mm-hmm. So as I'm going, I've got that original deal as just an LP. I've invested passively in that self-storage deal. And then we got our first multifamily deal under contract summer of 2021. So worked through that. We actually essentially got 2 under contract within a month. Both of those closed in 2021, December of 2021. And we invested passively in each of those deals. So yes, I'm kind of building that passive cash flow along the way. But as you said, like, aside from the acquisition fees, as an operator, you're not really getting a lot of money, especially exactly as you said, if there's a preferred return, which we have. Now our investors get money. We haven't really taken anything out of those deals beyond the acquisition fee.
Right. Now, there's really 2 parts of this that I want to just touch base on for people that are listening, because anybody who's active, who wants to do real estate full time, or maybe somebody is passive and they want to be a full-time passive investor. And I do know full-time passive investors, and they get great cash flow, and there's actually quite a few that invest in our deals. And it's really interesting because there's 2 numbers, right? There's the number of what you make currently in your job, right? And for me, it was like over 200,000 a year. And replace that number is a big number, right? So that's a hard number to replace. But the other number that people need to consider is what we call the rat race number. Like, what actually are your expenses that you're living in now? And there's a way to do it where if you can either cut back on some of your expenses or live a little more simply. I live pretty simply, and I just invest. I try to reinvest as much as I can because I know I'm shielding against inflation. I'm doing more long-term wealth strategies. But I think that's really the first step. And if you've ever played the game back here, I have Cash Flow, the board game there. It's all about whatever your living expenses are. If you're a doctor, a lot of times you make more money, but you may have higher expenses. And so if you can just lower your expenses, especially if you're making more money, it allows you to be able to get to that number more like easier. And so once you can develop enough cash flow, it allows you to be able to leave. Maybe you're not living like a king, but you're living, well enough. And so, but anyway, it's interesting because I know you haven't, when I left as well, it's like my net worth grew, right? My net worth is growing by every deal because of these long-term payouts, but it's also, the cash flow is lower unless you sell a coaching program, unless you're selling some sort of product. That's something a lot of people don't really think about. They kind of think, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this, and immediately or within a year or two, it's going to happen. But I mean, for you talked about basically within a year, you finding a couple deals, and that brought in enough. We invest, put skin in the game as well, passively active, but that was enough for you to be able to cover some or all those living expenses. Is that correct?
Yeah, certainly helps with living expenses. Definitely not to not to the point where it covers everything, but as you said, it doesn't, like, it doesn't necessarily have to cover everything. You can then look at, how do I want to scale back, or, kind of pull back the lifestyle a little bit at the time. Also, I still have when I left the W2, or as I left the W2, I do have that sort of safety net of, I still have my own business. And it was like, what I was really deciding on is am I going to grow one of the businesses? Am I going to grow both of the businesses? How is that going to work from a time standpoint? Because what I did realize was, it got to the point where the real estate business had grown enough that I couldn't do all three. So I had to pick something. I had to pick something. And although it, in a lot of people's heads, what I picked to leave behind is the most stable thing.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, in the long term, I don't think it's the most stable thing. I don't think the W2 job is. It's the highest taxed income strategy that you can have. It's the least efficient, I think. Working for someone else in sort of any sort of hourly capacity where you have to be there when they say you have to be there, I think is the least possible efficient way to work. I just don't. And I've thought that since I was basically a kid. I worked for my uncle, who, it was basically, we had a set amount of work to get done in the day. He paid me by the day. And I was like, well, so if I get this done by noon, I make the same amount of money. Like, I just always had that same mentality. And when you work for someone else, you don't have control over that.
Yeah, it's really a good point, because I think, a lot of, I worked with a lot of physicians, a lot of other, just people I know in my life that pay a lot in taxes, just think, oh, you have to pay a lot in taxes. And there are strategies you can use, even if you are a high earner, to be able to reduce your taxes significantly, or even potentially get to zero, even as a high earner. But so you had your business, which was related. It was a related business, but you also, and we even just talking a little bit before we started, and this is a similar thought that I had. I thought, well, I really, really want to try this, and I want to give it 110%. And so, there's a saying that you can go from working, 40 hours for someone else to working like 60 plus hours for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's just, and so I had to, say, and I travel a lot, I do other things. It's not necessarily that bad. And now I have freedom over my time, but you get out of the time for money trade. And what I told myself is, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back and I could do medical device sales again, right? And for you, like, you even have it even better. You could be like, hey, every Tuesday, I'm going to go in and do surgeries, or you can kind of scale it up. I know also Savannah Arroyo, who's she's a nurse. She's called the net worth nurse. She kind of has gone part-time. She was a nurse manager, and she was able to go part-time. So some of those jobs where you have autonomy, and I'm with my job, when I was working before, I could work 20 hours a week, but yet it was a full-time job. And I was, I wasn't a stellar rock star rep like I was before. And that was kind of hard for me to work through, but I realized this is where I'm going, right? This is the direction I want to go with my life. So, so let's talk a little bit about, I want to get into a couple other things here. We have a little more time, but, so as you've made these transitions, have you had any regrets, or is there anything that, I guess actually this is the question I guess I would ask. If you were giving somebody else counsel that's, let's say they're making $100,000 a year, they work a corporate job, or maybe they're an employee as a vet or something, and they're making a six-figure salary, what sort of advice would you give them if they're looking at leaving their job, or they want to do what you did?
Yeah, I think the first question, my advice is based on really kind of self-awareness. And the first question you have to ask yourself is, do I enjoy this job? Because the money doesn't really matter. There's lots of ways to make money. And we just talked about it. Like, I'm not making more money now, right?
Right.
And so you have to decide, do I really enjoy what I'm doing? And the reality is I do enjoy doing surgery. I just want to be in control, and I don't want to have to do it for money. And so what I would tell someone first, and if they're thinking about making this transition, even if you're a high income earner, do you enjoy what you're doing? And if you do, you might be able to figure out a way, like, you just mentioned Savannah. I know her as well. Like, you might be able to figure out a way to do both. But ultimately, what's going to give you that control of time is being involved in something that even an active real estate investor, what your goal is to make your money work for you, right? So it's like, ultimately, we all have some level of passiveness, as
Mhm.
that we're looking for as part of this. And as you just mentioned, you travel all the time. Like, that's the stuff that you're looking for. So the answer, I guess, long-winded answer to your question is get self-aware, ask yourself the question, what do you enjoy? Because you can figure out a way to work around that enjoyment.
Yeah, it's almost like you start with the end in mind. What do you want your
Yep.
life to look like?
Yep.
And what a lot of people think is they want freedom of money, but really it's not freedom of money. It's freedom of time. It's freedom of location. It's freedom of other things, so you can actually
Yep.
dictate what you want your life to look like. And I think that's there's an event I go to, a goals event in January called Create Your Future. And this will be my third time, and it's just going through creating really vivid goals and things and then just kind of a general, like, who am I and what's my mission? What am I here to do? And then from there, you kind of work back. Okay, what's going to allow me to get there? And so I think a lot of people get it wrong, where they think, oh, I'm going to have this yachts and Mai Tai lifestyle. And that's great, for like a week or a month, but like that can't sustain somebody's
Right.
vision. And it's very clear when somebody's doing it for the money. Like if you go to a used car lot and Fast Eddie's like, hey,
Right.
come on,
Right.
you look great in this nice 1968 Buick. You're like, I need to
Yeah.
get out of here right now, but obviously, you're doing this because you want to help people. You're serving. I mean, it's very apparent this time I've spent with you, Jason, that you're a person of integrity. You really want to add value. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some ways that you found have been helpful to add value, whether it's in real estate deals, to other partners, or it's been to, investors? I know you think you brought some investors on as well. So can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about just, how you feel you're adding value?
Yeah, I think in terms of adding it to real estate partners, the sort of, for me, again, I don't consider myself necessarily the capital raiser. That's not my strength, but I have found the multifamily deals that I'm part of, I have sourced them all. So I've really become, I feel like, pretty good at acquisitions. I don't know that I saw that coming. It wasn't something that I actually thought. I just thought that was probably a better way for me to go in my personality than capital raising, when my mentor said pick one of those to get started.
Mhm.
And so I did that. So I think that brings value if you bring deals to other people, right? Like if you bring a good deal, then people want to invest in it. But I think my sort of ongoing value in that capacity is having a large role in the asset management, which is what I always sort of thought I would be, where I would excel. And also, I just I'm pretty good, I think, at sort of being that, bridging the gap between people when there are problems, disagreements, that sort of thing. Like I'm can pretty easily get along with people, different personalities. I like finding solutions, right? And so it's like, maybe this goes back to me as a surgeon, but it's, if I'm in surgery and I run into something that isn't expected, or there's a challenge, right? I can't just stop and walk away. I can't just get mad and throw my hands up, right?
Mhm.
Like, you have to find a solution and you have to fix it. So that's how I approach kind of everything in life now. Maybe that's why I'm a good surgeon. Maybe I'm good at this because of surgery. I don't know which is the chicken and the egg.
Well, I think you're bringing up a really good point, because, we don't, it's not like people come to multifamily or come to real estate or come to syndication and they have no experience that's relatable at all. It's like there's so much relatable experience. And you were talking about it's either deals or money. And I did the same thing. I was like, I don't know what to do. I could do it. So I literally just tried to start to do both. I was like looking
Right.
at 50 deals and trying to bring it to partners. And that ended up working out. And then I kind of like realize, like, wow, like I've been doing sales for 10 years. Like maybe that'd be a good fit. I love working with
Yeah.
people. It just seems, but sometimes in the moment it doesn't seem clear. But usually if you're the person who's loves the spreadsheets and is really, analytical, and I mean, I can totally see it. I'm sure listeners as well can see that, somebody who's a surgeon and you're a good surgeon. You people refer to you and that you're well thought of in the industry. And so somebody who's a surgeon of a real estate deal, right? You know how to take it apart in a very, and put it all back together to make it work. And so that's a
Yeah.
very transferable skill. And you bring the same energy and the same focus you do to those deals that you do when you're trying to save, little Susie's cat or whatever, whatever
Right.
I don't know what
Yeah.
animals you're
No,
working on.
it's
Yeah.
no, that's exactly right. It's I didn't think it would be applicable, but I find that it is very applicable. And I think I'm also very calm. right? So when stuff goes wrong, it's like, okay, let's just figure it out
You're the
and
guy
fix
in
it.
war. If there's bombs going off, I want to be around you because you're going to be
Right.
like, here's what we're going to do here. We're
Right.
not going to lose our head.
Yeah.
We're just going to go around. We're
Right.
going to fix this. We're going to get,
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Don't
that
run
guy.
around screaming. That doesn't fix
Yeah.
anything, right?
Well,
Like
it's
just
really true though, but a lot of people that you don't really know a partner as if you're an operator or like in a
Mhm.
GP deal, you don't really know a partner until you've done a deal with them because everything comes out. You learn, are they, what's their integrity like? What's their whatever. So when I've had good partnerships or I've had partnerships that I'm like, we just don't align on certain things and
Yeah.
they're not bad people. It's just, we don't align on certain things.
Right.
But there's other ones where it's like, man, I want to do every single deal with these guys because I resonate. So the idea of just really finding those partnerships. But
Yeah,
anyway,
for
I
sure.
cut you off. Yeah, so I know we have just a couple more minutes left.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say that you think would just be helpful for people, again, that are saying, "Hey, I'd really like to do what you did," and what would you say, the next couple steps should look like? I mean, is it just put your nose down and just go to as many things, and I mean, is it just get in action, or what's kind of the
It
next step?
is. I mean, I think it's cliche, but you need to start doing something, right? You do have to take action. It is easy to get caught up in, I'm going to listen to every podcast, I'm going to read every book, I'm going to, learn as much as I possibly can. And that's great. But the reality is you're going to learn like 25% of what you actually need to know by doing all of that. And then you're going to learn the other 75% by just doing it.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of stuff that's just not in the books. And so I guess what I would say is start, find your level of self-awareness, what you think, where you think you fit, and then get out there and start just networking. And this I can give it as a good piece of advice, is because it's not something I did, and I think that's part of why I didn't go as quickly as I wanted to in the beginning, as I sort of initially tried to bypass some of the networking part of it, which in this business you can't. You just have to do it. So educate, network, but take action. Do things that will get you actually working, whether that's, and again, don't expect to make a lot of money when you start, because you're not
yeah.
gonna. This is really for what it looks like in 5 years. That's really what you're working towards at this point.
Yeah, no, it's a great business we get to be in. We get to help others grow their wealth. I know you're doing multifamily, you have self-storage, you're a reputable guy, you're doing some great things. You've got some great partners that are incredibly experienced on the asset management side that are doing some big things. So just encourage everybody to reach out to you if they're interested in working on a deal with a surgeon of multifamily and self-storage deals. So appreciate you, Jason.
Use that
Appreciate
tagline now.
You should. Yeah. You just say that was tagged by Bronson. So then I'll
Right,
give my
exactly.
credit.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, man, I just really appreciate you coming on today. Really appreciate all the value you're adding. And I think there's a lot of transformation in your story. So I hope you keep sharing it and you see that, you are actually changing lives as you share that story, because people are going to come up to you and say, "Hey, I heard you on Mailbox Money. And like, I'm actually doing the same thing now, or I'm actually made a decision that I'm going to do it." Tony Robbins says it's in our moments of decision that our destiny is shaped, right? So we decide. So somebody listening actually can decide and say, "This is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to do." And that happened for you, happened for me. We're able to get there. So, Jason, thanks so much for coming today and being on the show. We'd love to have you back again in the future. How can people connect with you?
Thank you, Bronson. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Best way to reach me is either email. It's jason@larkcapital.com, or you can reach out through social media, at Lark Capital, or my LinkedIn is just my name, Jason Balara. So either any of those ways is perfect.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jason. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so Jason Balara has done it, right? He left his job. It's not always as glamorous as it sounds, and maybe the revenue is not as high as what he wanted. But once you get to where you cover your living expenses, in my opinion, you are free, and that's what Robert Kiyosaki. That's the whole point of that game. If you played Cash Flow 101, it talks about just getting to where you have enough income passively to cover your living expenses. That's when you really become free. So. You can do that by reducing your expenses. You can do it by making more money. You can find other alternative things to do, but there's a lot of opportunities there. But one thing that really stuck out to me, what Jason said, is it's not enough to educate yourself, right? Just to I'm going to go educate myself forever, and I'm just going to learn. I'm going to do all these podcasts and videos and all sorts of things, but not actually do anything, right? You actually have to be willing to take action. And he talked about the power of networking. He said, "I wish I would have done more of that sooner." And I think that there's two things. It's networking and education. Those are the things that get you going. And it's really while you are in motion. And this is not just for people that want to quit their jobs. This is for passive investors. This is for anybody who wants to change their life. It's about getting in motion and just trying and working towards things. And what happens is kind of on the way, you go from kind of trying different things to where like, oh, this is it right here. And you really focus in on what is really going to be your mission and your focus. So that's my hope for you, friend, is that you find your focus, you find what your goal is, and you make a plan to work towards that. One way that I mentioned, there's a event called Create Your Future. If you send me an email, Bronson at Bronson Equity, I'd be happy to send you that link. It happens in January every year, and it's an awesome event. I'll be there. Going to be in Las Vegas area for a couple of days, but really powerful event just to get to a place of values. Who are you? You know, what are things that are important to you? What makes you angry? And then from there, you create a personal mission, and then there you can create some really amazing goals. Because if you don't start with that stuff first, the goals are just things, and they don't really have power, right? They're just, it's like a resolution. It doesn't really get to the core of who you are. So anyway, thanks for taking this time to educate yourself, and now go out and take some action. We'll look forward to seeing you or hearing, or I guess talking with you on the next episode of Mailbox Money.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.